Good afternoon, everyone. Now, there is something I've recently just noticed. It's not what I really wanted to talk about, but one thing I did notice this morning when I went to check my most recent video is that you no longer see how many people dislike the videos. And that applies to everyone, not just me. So now we're at a position where YouTube is actively covering up the dislike ratio on some videos. Now, who else other than the left wing and the mainstream media benefit from this? Any answers? The only other people that this actually does a favour for are the people who are genuinely dislikable. You know, people who, for example, do absolutely ridiculous things such as, remember back in the day when people were swallowing dishwasher tablets and what have you, or was it AirPods or something like that? I can't remember the exact name of it, but there was that. There were people who were just pushing for things like the poison XIX tripe, the antidote and all that. It's funny. As I said, who fucking else other than the left wing and the mainstream media and dislikable people benefit from the suppression of the number of people who dislike videos? I want to know. And my God, I'm going to end up getting blown in the road if this wind keeps up. Anyway, why would they do that, I wonder? I think YouTube is growing more and more out of touch with its audience every single day. They actively go out of their way to suppress people who mentions anything that goes against the current poison XIX and antidote narrative, and now they are serving left-wing wokals, the mainstream media, and other left-wing Silicon Valley sites such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, what have you, by removing the dislike ratio. Need I say more? Okay. Now moving on to what I really wanted to discuss, which is none other than the BBC themselves and mainstream in general. Isn't it funny to start off with newspapers about the poison XIX narrative? Isn't it funny how Metro in particular, because I know this because I've been taking a few of the fake news newspapers that have been sitting in buses at times. But Metro in particular are mainly pushing left-wing bullshit and pushing the wokals narrative of people who don't wear a face nappy are selfish, people who don't have the shot of the antidote are selfish. A bit like when that wanker Benjamin Buttersworth was on GMB. And he was saying that people who don't take the shot of the antidote or wear a face nappy, or both, are selfish, stupid and dangerous. His words, not mine. And this was when he was actually in a debate with a black woman who was categorically saying and proving with parliamentary reports and what have you that the antidote passports, the poison XIX passports, were discriminating against the British people based on race, socio-ethnological class and sex. The Metro is constantly pushing the left-wing narrative that if you don't have the shot, if you don't wear a face nappy, you're selfish, you're dangerous. I mean, who wants to hear that? Who wants to fucking hear that? I know I don't. Mind you, to be fair, that's because I don't conform to that bullshit. However, I guarantee you, you won't see a single right-wing newspaper telling people to take their face nappies off or not to get the shot. Why? Because this all comes down to personal fucking choice. As it should be. Hell, even when it's not newspapers, I've been harassed by a certain member of my family that I should get the antidote because God forbid what might happen to one of them if they caught it from me. And this is bearing in mind that the same person they're referring to of who could catch it has already had both jabs. And frankly, if I wanted 2 jabs, the only ones I would want is to the face of Boris Johnson. But hey-ho, I can't do that. Anyway, back onto the topic of the mainstream media. The BBC in particular, these wokals in the BBC have been known to take advantage of the elderly and the vulnerable through Capita. They're TV licensing goons. Or is it the customer care officers? Yeah, you literally couldn't make it up. It's basically like a giant turd sitting in the middle of the field, but instead of it just looking like one of those rounded coil poops, it's actually a smiley face emoji with a pile of shit on it. That's all it really is. And to put into context, how are they taking advantage of these people? Well, most of the time, the local media of the BBC are trying to get people to sign up for something that they don't even need. And I mean the TV license, of course. Before I go any further into this, I will link in the description below Chili John Carney. He's a really good YouTuber for the BBC and TV licensing. Exposes them good and fucking proper. Does a far better job than me and does it far more professionally than I probably ever will. But I digress. His channel will be linked in the description. He is also the person who actually let the British public know that one Davina McCall was actually signing a petition and wanted her, at the time, 2.7 million followers on Twitter to save the BBC to, and I quote, stop the political attack on our BBC, end quote. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably laughing your asses off at this right now, because I'm pretty sure a lot of you, myself included, anyway, I'm pretty sure a lot of you will have heard of petitions to abolish the BBC and abolish the TV license. But I don't think anyone here in the United Kingdom has ever heard of a petition to save the British Broadcasting Corporation. Or is it the British Bolshevik Corporation? Or the British Bullshitting Corporation? I mean, you can take your pick from any one of those fucking names. It makes no difference to me. The sheeple in the media know exactly what they're doing, and nothing we call them is going to change that. However, what annoys me more than anything about the BBC is their willingness to basically, at one side point, brush their complaints under the carpet. Because that is what they do. I have complained to the BBC on at least 4 or 5 occasions that I can recall off the top of my head. And I wish I had a top hat to include all the ones in there as well. Anyway, I have had 4 or 5 times, at least, in my past, where I've complained about the BBC's lack of impartiality, their lack of unbiased content, and of course, probably one in there about TR. But of course, all you ever get from the BBC is either a robotic response, which basically does this to everyone. It says, fuck you, or they just ignore it entirely because they don't care about what the British people think. All they care about is how they get their money to pay their woke celebrities. yes, I'm looking at you, Gary Lineker, with your £1 million plus per year. You make more than what probably 30 people do in a year. And that's being generous. It's probably more along the lines of 300. Maybe even 500. But whereas others are literally getting like, I don't know, 16, 17, 18,000 a year, he's making over 10 times that. Hell, he's even making over 50 times that to some degree. Side point out the way, let's go back to the TV licensing goons, who, before I go any further, I should make absolutely clear where and when you need a TV license, just like Chili John Carney has pointed out. But you only need a TV license if you, 1, watch programs as they are broadcast live, 2, if you record said broadcasts when they are live, and 3, if you watch any BBC program, whether it be on television or BBC iPlayer on any device, including your phone. Which is actually, funnily enough, why they're pushing for consoles to have BBC iPlayer. So that if some unfortunate sap, maybe a young person, because they did target university students recently, if some young sap has got his Xbox on, or his PS5 on, or whatever the latest generation console is, I should probably know considering I'm a gamer. Anyway, what if they've got their console on, and then some TV license goon walks in, sees their television, sees BBC iPlayer on their Xbox, or their PS5. They may get the notion that, oh, well, you have been watching programs on BBC iPlayer, or I'm going to use this opportunity to fabricate evidence that you've been watching programs on BBC iPlayer. Because there are people that do that. There are people willing to break the law to fabricate evidence of somebody watching BBC programs so they can get their £25 commission and get the BBC another £160 a fucking year. It blows my mind and makes my blood boil at the same time that people would be willing to go as far as to do that. As long as you're watching catch up and you're not watching anything on BBC iPlayer on any device or any BBC programs on any streaming network, they cannot get you to have a license. So when they do come up the door and you meet the latter conditions of not needing a TV license, you can follow a 3-step process to get rid of these wankers if they come at your door. So step 1, you open the door, ask them, who are you? They identify themselves. I'm Bob Harrison, I'm from TV licensing. Step 2, not interested, please go, close the door is step 3. You do that to the letter, there's nothing they can do. They won't ever be able to get a £25 commission from you, and you have saved yourself 160 quid. And you know what's funny as well? Turns out something even more recently put out by Chili John Carney is that the BBC have actually frozen the TV license fee price. This is not a public service. This is a public insult. Because, frankly, what they're doing is basically a racketeering group, to be perfectly blunt. The BBC runs a racketeering group as shamelessly as they covered for Jimmy Savile. That is what they think of you, the British people. They think you all as stupid. They think of you as, to some extent, retarded. And yes, I am willing to use that word. They think of all of you as people completely unable to think for yourselves. And I'm willing to bet that the vast majority of people can actually think for themselves and actually understand categorically the public disservice the BBC provides. Their shows are crap. Their racketeering goons are aggressive most of the time, and they're a bit more polite nowadays because of Poison XIX, and of course they don't want people to find out if they've written anything nasty, because you can actually request their public notes on you, and then that's why you most often when you request them, it only has nice comments on there. They've been more polite lately, but back in the days they went in as hard and as rough as they come. All because they wanted to intimidate you, the British public. Mainly the elderly and the vulnerable, and those who maybe are impressionable, the young people. I remember when I had a TV license letter come through my door, I simply told them I don't need a license, and that has been the end of that ever since. Though I suspect they'll try to get me to sign up anyway. But it will just be the same shit. I will tell them, don't need one, jog on, basically. And remember as well, the BBC were responsible for putting out digitally altered footage, which came from a Syrian, it was either a playground or a hospital, I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head, but there was basically a napalm bomb that went off at one of these two places. They might have been filming at the hospital, but I think it went off in the playground now that I think of it. But there was a woman who said, and I will quote her exact words, "There's mass confusion and chaos. It must be some kind of napalm," end quote. And then the BBC were caught with their pants down because they were caught showing footage, showing the exact same woman saying the exact same thing, except at the very end, instead of the word napalm, they digitally altered it to say chemical weapon. And all of this was under the pretense that they wanted to shift the vote for the British forces to go and bomb Syria with al-Assad in there. If that does not show you how dishonest they are, nothing ever will. And bear in mind, this happened before the Section 2 of the 2006 Fraud Act could be put into play. Since it happened, I think it was in the 90s, or maybe the 80s. But they were willing to lie about this shit. So if they're willing to lie about going over to, well, if they're willing to lie about what kind of weapon that was used in that kind of situation, or reuse old footage, it would seem silly to give them the benefit of the doubt over any other news that they have broadcast. That would at best cast a shadow over any news that they put out at that point, and at worst it would completely question the credibility of the BBC. Hell, there was also a situation which I covered this on my old channel, but you remember when Tommy Robinson was invited onto Sky News for an interview back in, I think it was October 17 or 18, something like that? And it was, if I'm trying to remember this now, yeah, this was based off of a Holland educational video. It was telling young females about Moroccan Muslims that were coming over to Holland to ply them with alcohol so that they could then be groomed. And what Tommy had said was, I don't care if it, as in the video, incites fear of Muslims as long as it educates the children and prevents them from being raped. I mean, given they weren't children, they were teenagers, but it's beside the point. Anyway, they actually then went out of their way to put out a statement, not even replacing a word, but taking out a single letter, the letter T. So it changed it from being, I don't care if it, to I don't care if I. And they ran with the the statement, "I don't care if I incite fear of Muslims," when that was nothing of what he said at all. It was completely taken out of context, and the Sky News basically had willfully lied about him, and that could be taken categorically. He could have taken them to court over that for defaming his character under Section 2 of the 2006 Fraud Act, fraud by false representation. Nobody ever says a word about it. And this isn't about TR, obviously. However, surely it comes down to basic principles here regarding how the media operates. You would expect the mainstream media to tell the truth and do their job, as in their remit. But Sky News chose to willfully lie. But then, it's always about manipulating words with the mainstream media, manipulating what people say, and make it look like they're saying something they're not. I don't understand how people, or maybe I got it right first time, who knows. Anyway, it boggles my mind that these people can't see what's basically hiding in plain sight. And what's funny is I'm actually standing pretty much right next to ITV Anglia, and I'm saying this. I'm willing to bet somebody's going to fucking hear me at some point and then come out and say, "Stop recording." But frankly, I haven't talked shit about ITV yet. Anyway, this is fundamentally wrong, what they're doing. Lying about people, lying about events, defaming a person by changing a letter, or removing a letter, I should say. And they're willing to lie about Poison XIX as well. I had actually taken down a video because the original video from Politico had gone. But the government and the media, the media is willing to lie for the government regarding the infection statistics prior to the first lockdown. I wonder what they have to say about that. The media and all that were willing to fabricate more lies that the lockdown had an impact on the infection rate of Poison XIX when it didn't do it at all. The lockdown had no impact on it. Wearing face nappies had no impact on it. Having the double jab, if anything, has increased infectivity, and that has been proven through the government's own reports, so they can't take me down for misinformation on that. I'd love to see them fucking try, though, the wankers. All they'll do is actually prove my point entirely, and actually prove that I'm saying the right things. Because YouTube is becoming increasingly fascistic. The media are becoming I'll get the word right eventually. Anyway, increasingly fascistic. It's kind of difficult the way to say it, but they are becoming increasingly fascistic with how they don't allow certain people on their platforms, or how people on Twitter say, "Why are you giving XYZ a platform?" Which is the unequivocal definition of fascism. Denying political opposition by silencing them or denying them a platform of which to speak their views. And this doesn't just apply to Tommy Robinson. This applies to the people as well who've been saying, "Stop giving Insular Britain airtime." To which I say, no, we should give them airtime and expose the idiocy of what they're doing, the recklessness of what they're doing, the dangers of what they're doing, because they are putting others in danger, and we should 100% expose that. And as I said in the previous video, these wankers were even willing to say, I think it was to the Telegraph, that there would be violence if they didn't have peaceful protests. And on the subject of peaceful protests, isn't it funny how the mainstream media, when I went to those protests in London and Manchester, the only thing, wow, my voice is breaking. Anyway, the only thing that those wankers were interested in was getting a hit piece out, i.e. far-right thugs attack police, or only a few hundred instead of a few thousand, or tens of thousands of people attend a rally to protest freedom of speech, or the BBC, or anti-lockdown, or whatever it is. But they're always willing to lie about this kind of shit. I wouldn't be surprised if ITV Anglia was also part of that. I don't know if they are, but it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if that is exactly what they did. But we need to hold mainstream media to account. We need to hold these people, hold their feet to the fire, because these people are willing to lie through their teeth, if they have any. Anyway, they are willing to lie through their teeth. They are willing to fabricate news. They're willing to cover up news, just like Jimmy Savile. They are willing to defame people. They are willing to intimidate the elderly and the vulnerable with the BBC TV licence fee. All signs of a corrupt media. All signs that we cannot trust our media in the slightest. And what's sad is there will be a lot of sheeple who will just continue their day, continue their lives as if nothing has happened. They'll walk on, they'll go to Tesco's, get their food, they will go and speak to relatives. Oh, wasn't the weather lovely? God, my accent sucks. Anyway, they will go and speak to their relatives, speak about how the weather is and how their dogs or cats are doing and all that, and nobody will once take heed. Those are the blue pills, the wokals. They won't once look at this and think, you know what, this is wholly fucking corrupt. Both spellings of holy. We have to do something about this. First and foremost, we need to abolish the TV licence fee for the BBC. And then, we need to prosecute the media. We need to fine them into submission for willfully lying to the British people, for willfully defaming people. They are willing to cover their own asses, but not once are they willing to tell the truth. And that's what will set us free. That's what they don't want us finding out. Because I'll tell you right now, if media outlets like this, or the BBC, or Sky News, are forced to tell the truth, they are abjectly terrified of what might happen if the British people find out. They are worried there will be riots on the streets. They are worried there will be violence. They are worried that they will basically be completely scrapped. They are worried that there will be a fundamental change that actually requires them to start doing their job. That requires them to tell us what's really going on and not what they want us to know. 1% control the world. 4% are global sellout puppets. 90% are still asleep. 5% know and are trying to wake up the 90%. And the 4% are trying to stop the 5% from waking up the 90%. That is how it operates. That's why the mainstream media fear people like me. Because when I start growing back up to the numbers I had before, where I was on 3,200 subscribers, where I'm not being persecuted by previous companies, including one that basically took advantage of me being a temp and said that we're dismissing you based on your political views, and people that are just willing to discriminate in general. What's sad is one of these companies is even on BBC quite frequently, which is what makes my blood boil. May not sound like it, but deep down inside it really does make my blood boil. I think I've made my point pretty clear. Something fundamentally needs to change. These people have to change. Fundamental change needs to come from the heart of our fake news outlets. Because if we do not change the media, we will not change this country. It's as simple as that. We can get rid of the government because it belongs to the people. But mainstream media outlets like ITV, the BBC, Channel 4, Sky News, and even to some extent Great Morning Britain, or Good Morning Britain, sorry. Words are hard. Anyway, even outlets like Good Morning Britain, they will continue to lie to us. They'll continue to lie through their teeth about events that are going on. They'll lie about Poison XIX. They'll lie about how Insular Britain are being policed. They're not really being policed at all. Insular Britain, if anything, are being handled with a kid gloves approach. It takes the British fucking public to move the wankers off the road in Birmingham and in London, when really it should be the police doing it. But the media try to make out, oh, the police are moving them on. Yeah, only because they don't want the British people to start doing it. Because the British people will do a far better job than those sheeple ever will. Or sorry, the local police forces. And unfortunately, I'm running out of storage, so I'll have to end it here. So, I'd say this to you, mainstream media. You better start telling the truth to people. You better have something click in your head. Or your heads, your collective heads. Because if you don't start changing, if you don't actually start telling us the truth, we the British people will come into your studios. We will broadcast the truth for you. And we will set the 90% who are still asleep out into this place, wild and free. My name's Dabima, also known as Abathorex, and I am, as always, very, very bad news for our corrupt media and our crooked police and the Insular Britain wankers. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day. And media, consider yourselves warned.